Hey you guys, this is Head Coach Ross of the Attacks Gym with part 2 of my interview of my coach, my uncle, my instructor, the leader of our association, senior instructor, Bobby Thomas. How are you doing, Uncle Bobby?
Great.
Excellent. There's been quite a few, a cascade in fact, of questions and interest that was raised by your last interview, and people have sent me a whole host of questions they want to ask you, so if you don't mind, we can jump right into it.
That's great.
Okay. The first question they wanted to ask you was this. What is the specific brand and background of Kenpo you had? Is it EPAC? Is it Tracy? Is it a combination? Is there a bunch of other things? Could you please elaborate on that?
My instructor, David Cardenas, was a student under Ed Parker and the Tracy brothers. So I began studying with him, and so it's a combination of both. But what I did was I saw that some techniques just did not make sense. Now when I do this, I study this for self-defense, not to uphold some style, form, or anything like that. So I figure, hey, since I'm doing this for to protect myself, you got to be realistic, you got to be practical. So I threw out a lot of techniques and changed a lot of techniques around, which is everybody's free to do, because it has to you have to do it so that it makes sense to you. You know, the art has to fit you, not you the art.
Oh, could you please say that one more time, Uncle Bobby?
No, once again, the art has to fit the person, not the person the art. We're all different sizes. Everybody has to do a technique that will work best for them. Don't be afraid to stay, or don't be afraid to step out of the box of tradition. And as I said before in the first interview, when tradition hinders progress, you do away with tradition. No one can say that you should not or should have done it this way, because you're the only one that's in that situation. So you do what you feel is best, and what is best is what is practical and common sense.
Yes, sir.
If it's a good idea to run. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Not at all. You know, you train like you fight, and fight like you train. If you have to run like hell. You have to fight like hell. But you got to be practical. You got to do this so that you can walk away and be safe.
Excellent answer. The next question, sir, that I got a lot, revolves around the controversy that I wound up, unintentionally stirring up, and that is with the whole concept of rock, drop, and lock, and taking a sequence or a technique and not sticking with only one interpretation. In fact, not coming up with an interpretation until after we've tested it against strikes of all kinds, 360 degrees in a circle, seated position like you're in now, standing, weapons, grappling, multi-fights, etc., so on and so forth. And the result has been that the techniques that you expressed and the techniques that I expressed are radically different than the techniques that other Kenpoists express, even though the name is somewhat similar. Could you expound upon that philosophy?
Well, don't get hung up on the names of techniques, because it's not going to do you any good in the street. Okay? Make the technique as simple and short and dynamic as possible. You don't have all day to hit this guy 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, particularly when you have multiple opponents. So if a back knuckle and a side kick will do the job, then do that, because you have other opponents to face. So you face those other folks and you're ready to go. But trying to do a technique that doesn't make sense and you have other people around you, you're not doing yourself any favor that way.
Excellent, sir. So is that the reason why we take all of our basics, like you just used the example of the back knuckle and the side kick? Is that the reason why you would have us do the back knuckle and side kick from your seated position, standing, from grabs, from 360 degrees, somebody with a rear attack, or somebody's grabbed you by the neck from behind, against weapons, all these good things? Because until you're able to apply those techniques against that kind of attack, you haven't acquired the proper level of proficiency with the application of those techniques?
Well, if you practice it, practice the technique from every situation possible. Know what your options are. You're not obligated to say, for example, 5 swords. Why use 5 when 1 or 2 will do? You see, kimono grab. Why do that if the person has very strong arms? You have to resort to something else. So you have to make it fit you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. And allow me to elaborate for some of the individuals who have responded in droves to your last interview. Now, this does not mean, when Uncle Bobby says that, okay, why use 5 swords when 1 or 2 will do, it doesn't mean that you don't practice firing the five swords. What it means is, because you've practicing those techniques, you know how to end a conflict with 1 or 2 shots, and you know when to take it out to 3, 4, and 5 shots, depending upon the circumstances of the situation. Now, from this angle, because I'm actually standing and Uncle Bobby is seated, you can't see that Uncle Bobby is over 6 feet tall and I'm only 5'7". Okay, if I were to attack him, 1 or 2 hand swords is all he would need. On the other hand, if Brock Lesnar were to attack him and the first 2 attacks aren't perfectly on target, which is what happens usually in self-defense circumstances, not perfect, then you may have to resort to a 3rd, 4th, or 5th strike. But the advantage is that you train your techniques that way. You train it with that training paradigm in mind, so you don't have the kind of built-in failure that happens in various other kinds of training paradigms, wherein people will talk about, okay, here's the ideal technique and here's the what if. They separate them, and what happens is the what if situations, which are the ones that are most likely to happen, have the least amount of muscle memory repetition and the least amount of resistance. But the way we train it, as Uncle Bobby has guided it, is you either do it or you don't. So you apply your techniques against a variety of assaults, and that is the technique. There isn't okay, here's a base sequence, and then here's what you do if he does this, and here's what you do that. No, you understand the principles behind the techniques, and then you apply it accordingly, and you do that through rigorous application and through rigorous intellectual cultivation.
Exactly. That's why the situation will dictate what you do. Okay, that's as simple as you can get it. The situation will always dictate what you do. If it dictates that you run, fight. If you feel that you need a weapon, know how to use a weapon, whether it's a stick, a garden rake, a knife, know how to throw a rock, an ashtray, a lamp, or whatever you want to do, because this is a very serious situation. This is there's too much mystification around martial arts. This is a real situation. People are attacking you. You need to defend yourself. Do what you need to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, as a matter of fact, I'm glad you touched upon that, the mystification and whatnot, and the almost deification of individuals, you know, of a particular rank and stuff. Could you explain to everybody why we do away with titles like Grandmaster and Master and Professor and stuff, and stick primarily with student, you know, assistant coach, head coach, and senior instructor?
Well, to me, see, whatever degree you have, black belt, brown belt, it's a modicum of success. Let's say you reach the rank of 9th degree. Well, you put in a lot of time, a lot of commitment to reach that level. Well, you've succeeded at doing that. That's great. But that does not necessarily mean that you know how to fight. It simply means that you put time in to do this. Okay? So actually, it's not the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog.
Yes, sir.
For example, what level is Mike Tyson? Is he a black belt? No, he's not a black belt, but he has the skills and the know-how to knock your head clean off. So what it comes down to is skills. Skills. Not a degree or a red stripe in your belt. It comes down to skills. That's what it comes down to, and that's what you have to develop constantly. when I took my black belt, I had to repeat this oath that Ed Parker made up that said, "Here are my weapons, and I will only use Kempo." Wrong. If I have a baseball bat, I'm going to use it. If I have a knife, I'm going to use it, because we're talking about self-defense here. The belt rank level and all that kind of stuff, that has a lot to do with learning different katas and all that. That's fine, that's great, but skills, punching and kicking and blocking, that's where it's at.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's where it's at.
Yes, sir. Oh, and before you guys blow up my Twitter and my YouTube again, when Uncle Bobby referred to that particular oath of Kempo and said that Mr. Parker made it up, what actually, I've known him, we had this conversation for about 3 decades, is that whether or not Mr. Parker sanctioned it, it carries the stamp of Mr. Parker's authorization. Whether or not he actually did that. Now that segues off into a whole nasty area regarding Kempo politics, which we don't get involved in. Matter of fact, Uncle Bobby, could you explain to everybody why we don't get involved in Kempo politics, please?
Because it doesn't make sense. Everybody's going to do what they want to do. No one is obligated to come under the umbrella of any Kempo stylist. You do what's best for you. Okay, you work that thing out the way you see it best for yourself. So that's why we don't get into politics, because we don't care about what you do. That's your business. What we do is we train to defend ourselves. We don't ego trip. We don't brag. We don't go around looking for fights. The overall concept of a martial artist is to be a humble person, is to be an intelligent person, and someone who is willing to help others and defend other people. That doesn't mean you go around looking for fights to get into, but at the same time, you don't go around just watching somebody get bullied and then figure, well, that's not my problem. Sometimes you need to stand up for something, because if you don't, you'll fall for anything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And is that tenet right there, the importance of standing up and being honorable and being aware of and adhering to the tenets of not only social responsibility, but as to the martial code that martial artists are obligated to conform to? Is that why you insisted that we from the color belts up always gave back to the community and executed X amount of acts of kindness per day? Is that where that came from, sir?
In my point of view, yes, it is, and that I believe that's that's universal. I believe you want to be an asset to yourself and your community rather than a liability. Okay, so if you can help people out, do that. If you can't, you can't. But at the same time, you don't want to be a problem to yourself and the community at large. You want to be a problem solver.
Yes, sir.
So I believe that's one of the positive tenets of being a martial artist.
Yes, sir. Now, first, that's just wonderful, by the way, Uncle Bobby. In regards to kind of steering it back, now they touch upon some of the aspects here that are very controversial to a number of other Kempo stylists. We're looking at the array and the amount of techniques. You brought up that point before, and the fact that quite a few Kempoists adhere to what is now more commonly referred to as the standard model ideal phase, which my friend Clark came up with that phrase and started getting popular, and they all seem to believe that anyone who does, say, 5 swords or kimono grab or what have you, has to do it in this way against this specific attack and only that.
No, you don't. That is very shallow and narrow-minded. Again, the situation will dictate what you do. If a back fist and a right cross to take care of the situation, do that. And when it comes to 5 swords, for example, all it is just a multiple of punches, but you're using different hand weapons. Again, if one hand will do the work of 5, great, then do that. But you don't have to do it just because that's what Kimpo does. Again, you're locking yourself into a traditional box that does not, that is not practical or realistic in any kind of way. A shot to the throat, if that'll work, fine. A kick to the groin, if that'll work, fine. Do that. But just because someone says that, well, this is Kimpo, doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. You have to do it, again, in a way such that the situation dictates.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that means that if you train, say, your 5 swords against grabs, against locks, against armed opponents, against multiple fights or what have you, that means that expression is every bit as valid and as much quote-unquote 5 swords as someone else who uses the more restrictive, more common standard model ideal phase expression. Would that be correct?
Well, you know, what is the standard model though? Everyone cannot, the standard model cannot apply to everyone, because again, you're saying, that's like saying that this is Kimpo, so we must do it this way. No, you don't.
Exactly.
The situation will dictate what you do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's simple as that. As simple as that. I don't care what you call yourself. It better work.
Yeah.
It better work.
Yes, sir.
So you have to be practical, use your common sense, and go about it that way.
Yes, sir. So it seems then that one of the primary points and one of the primary messages you want to get across is the overriding importance of practical, functional, efficient, expeditious training paradigms. So if you take that principle, that approach, then whatever technique you plug into that paradigm will also be practical, efficient, expeditious, and is applicable to whatever the situation calls for, because that's how you train it.
I believe I'm saying that.
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
you know.
That's what I'm saying.
Now I want you guys to hear this. I want to underscore this. All right. My uncle has made this clear, so it's not just me, some renegade guy running around saying this. This is my uncle who goes back to the old school. You know, I mean, we're talking the days of, you know, who do you mention, Uncle Bobby? You know, Chappelle, Mr. Willits, and who?
No, we're talking about the guys who were prominent in the competition back in the '60s. Master Steve Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
Brother Donnie Williams.
Yes, sir.
Outstanding, phenomenal fighters, man. We're talking about the guys from up in San Jose fighting. Just a whole host of people.
Yes, sir.
They're probably no longer in the picture, but those guys, they didn't care about all the fancy moves and all that kind of stuff. What they cared about was defeating their opponent.
Yes, sir.
Whether it's on the street or whether it's in the ring.
Yes, sir.
And it was to get it done and over with quickly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, since you touched upon that other hot spot, you know, right? Could you concisely convey to us what is your opinion of the distinction between, say, sport, combat, and self-defense?
Sport, combat, and self-defense. Sport combat, you get a point for touching the person.
Mm-hmm.
In the street, you get an opportunity to hurt that person and then go home. In sport combat, if you lose, you go home. In the street, if you lose, you go to the morgue. So you better step up your game.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So you need to step up your game.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And you guys, you just heard it from him right here, and I wanted to clarify. and emphasize this point. This is why we train for the street and ratchet down for sport. We do not train for sport and assume it is the same as street self-defense. This also takes us full sail, and might as well do it now. You know, directly into that whole area in debate regarding mixed martial arts and more traditional martial arts and the various distinctions between the martial arts. It is, in our opinion, as Uncle Bobby has taught us, it boils down to the situation which dictates what you do and what is your personal preference and philosophy. Do you have a hierarchy of importance? There's a lot of people who follow mixed martial arts and swear that mixed martial arts is the only martial art that works. The truth of the matter is that MMA, the literal term itself, is reflective of a sport, and it follows the rules and regulations of various sports athletic commissions. What separates that sport of expression is that it goes to the roots of traditional martial arts and takes the combination of those arts that focus in particular ranges of combat, and it takes them collectively and applies them with a very functional and efficient training paradigm. That's the only thing that separates it from anything else. It's a sport, and it uses it with a training paradigm.
Now that's not to say that you can't grapple on the street. It's just that you have to do it much quicker and much more effective, because here's a situation that's different than the sport. Okay. It wouldn't be very wise to try to apply the sport idea on the street, because you're not going to do everything that you would normally do, on the street as you would in the sport.
Let me elaborate on that point. I really want you guys to grasp this. It's not a slam on MMA.
Not at all.
At all. But if you were to shoot the double leg, for instance, the way you do in the ring, on the concrete, well, when you're shooting forward, your knee actually plants into the padded floor on the ring. On the concrete, what you're doing is you're ramming your kneecaps and your ligaments, into the concrete. You can shatter your own knee before you can even do anything to your opponent.
That's why you have to be practical and use your common sense. Some things you just not a good idea to do in the street that you would in the ring.
Yes, sir.
You have to be quick and efficient, practical, common sense.
Yes, sir. Now, again, I want to emphasize. Now, what that means is, it doesn't mean that you say, oh, you don't do the double leg on the street. Uncle Bobby and I, we do various forms of the double leg, including the classic one, but we don't put our knee on the ground, because you bust your knee open on the concrete. So what happens is, the training paradigm you have, the way you, like he said, train how you fight, you'll fight how you train. If you train thousands and thousands of repetitions of shooting forward with power but putting your knee on the ground, that means under stress or under duress on the street, wherever you happen to be at, you do it too. So imagine this: you're in Beirut with an AK-47 and various other. You're an army member. You're under duress. Something happens where your firearms aren't working. You have to rely now upon your hand-to-hand combat skills. You're gonna shoot with your knee on the ground, okay, against another armed soldier. That's gonna cause you some problems. You could be right here in Southeast San Diego, or where I live in East Side Long Beach, and try to shoot the double leg on the concrete near 20th and Lemon. You don't leave your knee on the concrete on 20th and Lemon, and that other guy, the guy you're fighting with, is not going to have a problem with you. Or you could even be successful at it. Take the guy down. That puts you in a perfect position to get stomped out by the rest of his friends. So it doesn't mean you throw away the double leg. Which means is you train your double leg with the idea that this guy might have a weapon, he might have friends, he might have to shoot on a concrete, he might have a knife, I might have to do it from the seated position, I might have to turn around, I might have to do it from somebody getting my back. That's your double leg. That's your double leg.
Exactly.
The sporter version is, you should make that distinction. You should ratchet down from there. So, I just want to make that clear, guys. All right?
So, next question.
Sir, what is your opinion about katas?
A kata is a library of techniques. If you remember if you remember short three, for example. Okay. Well, short three consists of multiple techniques. You'll never forget those techniques as long as you remember short three.
Yes, sir.
So, and also it tells a story, and it's a good exercise.
Yes, sir.
That's why I like katas.
Yes, sir. You know, now on the subject of katas, because of the questions we keep receiving, a lot of people see that there's two primary themes and expressions in the katas that you have us do. The one is a series of movements that you use like against live attacks. The other is more expressive of as you stated before, of a theme, like a story. And now people don't understand what the distinction is. They ask all the time, why do you have two different versions or what have you, and you're only supposed to have one different version? Only one expression, which is the same one that everybody else has. Do you care to elaborate upon that, sir?
I do short one the way I was taught. It's a series of blocks. It has 8 moves in it. So I'll never forget the inward block, upper block, outward block, downward block. So as simple as that.
Yeah.
So again, you'll never forget those type of blocks that's in that kata. You'll never forget the kicks or the elbow or whatever the case may be. And again, it's like a library, a moving library.
So in your opinion, kata are very important because it's a moving library, it's an excellent form of exercise, and it does belong in the arsenal of progressive martial artists, not just traditional, but well, there's value in it.
There's value in it, but I think that's a very individual thing.
Yes, sir.
Maybe to somebody else they don't care about that, but I enjoy it. I enjoy doing them because it is a good form of exercise, low impact exercise. So I enjoy it tremendously.
Yes, sir. Well, what would you think, insofar as the modern martial artist, the progressive martial artist is concerned, what role do you think that weapons play in the arsenal of modern martial artists, and which weapons would you give more emphasis to? And does this translate into your application of empty hand techniques, or?
Yeah, if you use a simple 2-foot long stick, I think that's a fantastic weapon. You just have to know how to use it. We can't walk around these days with katanas and nunchucks and gunpas and sickles and all that kind of stuff. Somehow the law is jealous about that. So I say train simply. Get a stick. Learn how to train with that.
Yes, sir.
If you need to carry a small knife, well, carry a small knife. But and if you enjoy using a chain and sickle as a kata, as an exercise, great. That's great. But I think less likely would you pull that out of your trunk if somebody was to harass you. Just get a stick. You can do a lot of damage with the stick.
Yes, sir.
A lot of damage.
Okay. Now, how would you address people who have a specialty, like those who are grappling specialists and who advance the idea that why do you think that your strikes will work against multiple opponents if your strikes can't stop one guy from taking you down? And how would you conversely address people who feel that how can you say that you have a effective self-defense program if you can only engage one person at a time? These types of approaches.
Listen, no matter what quote style you study, it's all theory into proven otherwise. Okay. Now we know that if you shoot someone, that's reality. Okay.
Yes, sir.
If you stab someone, that's reality. If you strike someone with a stick, that's reality. But you got to remember that your body as a weapon. Okay. You got multiple opponents. Maybe your body can't withstand that kind of pressure, that kind of heat that you once could. Maybe your legs are not as strong as they used to be, so now you have to use just one leg to kick with, or you may have a whole host of problems that now you can't do what you used to do. Okay? So that's why you have to keep it short and sweet. Short and sweet. You know, all this jumping up in the air and spinning and all that kind of stuff. I don't care what kind of endurance you may have. Keep it short, sweet, and simple.
Yes, sir.
Okay, practical and effective.
Yes, sir.
You know, that's my approach on it anyway.
Yes, sir.
What everybody else does, that's fine. Do what they want to do, but that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what I
do. Okay, that's magnificent. That's magnificent. Now, you know, we have a few more questions that a number of people have asked about, and that is, in going back again, you know, trying to skirt as much as possible, but quite a few of these questions are loaded with political, shall we say, political perspectives and philosophies in them. You know, dealing especially from our Kenpo brethren. In Kenpo, there's a wide array of techniques, and there's the idea of what constitutes mastery or skill level. You know, there's the idea that certain expressions, you know, and you know, apply, you know, prove effective training methods like technique lines, you know, and certain ranks, you know, necessarily imply skill, as opposed to what you said before, which was time spent, you know, pursuing or enacting, interacting in a particular art.
I think only in theory does that mean anything. If you say, well, this guy is a 6th Dan, so therefore he knows how to do that reverse punch real well, that's great. Technically, that person is very sound. But if some 3-year-old kid hits you in the groin, that 3-year-old kid is very sound and hitting you in the right spot. That's all it is hitting somebody in the right spot. You know? And so again, it comes down to skill. How much time do you spend in front of that bag punching it? How many times a day or whatever do you kick the bag? As opposed to sitting around spouting some mystified theory about catching a fly with a chopstick. Listen, all that stuff is about as crazy as I don't know what. I just say train.
Yes, sir.
And don't chase the degree. Go for the knowledge.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
It's good that you say, okay, hey, you know, I made it to black belt. That makes me feel good because I succeeded at doing something. That's great. But that person may not be a fighter at heart. You know, that is something that you learn over a lifetime.
Yes, sir.
You know, so and as basically as I can put it is either you're a lamb or a lion. And lamb stew gets served every day. So you can't go through the world being a lamb because you get eaten.
Yes, sir.
And that means you have to practice your skills.
Yes, sir. Are there any specific, you know, suggestions? I know there's all kinds of different training paradigms, but are there specific guidelines that you might want to suggest to the viewership out there, and ways on how to practice their skills in a way in which they actually acquire and accumulate skill, applicable skill?
Practice punching that bag. Practice kicking the bag. Sparring. Sparring, it really is just slow kata.
Yes, sir.
Or fast kata, I should say. Kata is slow sparring.
Yes, sir.
So practice both of them. Because with sparring, what that does is help you develop your speed, your timing, your reflexes, and your awareness.
Yes, sir.
So if you can do that every day, or how often you can, that's great. Do that.
Yes, sir.
Because again, it try to make you a well-rounded fighter when it comes to practicing your kicks and your punches and so on.
You know, sir, you just touched on another issue. You know, I'm trying to keep the camera as still as I can as I'm talking. I'm laughing, you know, and stuff like that, and shifting the camera. But there are a number of high-profile kinpo brothers and sisters who believe that the moment they hear the word sparring, they equate that purely and primarily and solely to just like point fighting, and not even continuous sparring, but point fighting, sport of, you know, tournament techniques.
Well, they have to broaden the concept of sparring and what it includes. If it includes, and it should, wrestling. If you happen to go to the ground, what do you do when you get there? When you get to the ground, if you're say you're practicing that front leg roundhouse kick, well, how do you follow up with that? What do you do before that?
Yes, sir.
What is your most able kick? You know, what is your most able punch? Again, those are the things that are most important that you're looking for when it comes to sparring. If you are a rather say light in weight, maybe you're able to move around a lot. That's great. So you take advantage of that and make that work for you. If you have a lot of, if you carry weight around you, what is best for you? Is it good to rush in and grab the person and throw? Maybe that's your thing.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you're not as fast as the next guy, but you have to find out what works best for you.
Yes, sir.
Because the art has to fit you, not you, the art.
Yes, sir. So that means it's perfectly sensible to include in under the umbrella of sparring various situations that are germane to self-defense. Like you're seated right here and someone attacks you, we can practice our blocks from there.
Well, I wouldn't exactly call that sparring. I'm saying when you're standing in front of another person, or two other persons, or three other persons, that's valuable sparring time, because you get a chance to see these people around you, and you're thinking, okay, what do I do now? Is this kick applicable here? Or maybe I should have spent a little bit more time doing this spinning back knuckle here, or doing this roundhouse kick, or this elbow, or this forearm.
Yes,
so
sir.
all those things come into play. All that comes into play when you're sparring, because again, it develops your timing, your speed, your reflex, and your sense of awareness.
Ah, okay.
Your sense of awareness. Don't listen. Don't try to do combat or tournament sparring out there in the street.
Yeah.
Whole different bag.
Yes, sir.
Whole different bag.
Yes, sir.
And so if you can't dig that, then you might want to try something else.
Yes.
You know?
So as you stated, you know, train how you fight, fight how you train, and so the self-defense applications is how you would have trained it that way, and that would be self-defense sparring. Tournament sparring is more oriented toward the tournament environment. There you go. There you go. Now this is common. This is how my everybody who's hearing this interview. Okay, we're about to wrap it up, but this is how my uncle raised us. We were able to not only make the distinction between the two, but see how the two were necessary to have a more complete whole, and see where there's time for one and time for the other. It also allows you to have the facility that's much ballyhooed but rarely incarnated, which is the ability to deal with a person and control them, even though you come from a training paradigm which emphasizes strikes more than, say, ground submissions. This is why we're able to do what we're able to do. This is where RDL, rock, drop, and lock, has its birthplace, its genesis, right here, from the philosophies that my uncle here is teaching, and the things that you guys are seeing him do in the application of the various katas. Okay.
And I want to say before we close.
Yes, sir.
As martial artists, you have an obligation to practice your art so that you can be carried on. You know, if you teach your children how to defend themselves,
Yes, sir.
But whatever you do, be practical in your approach, and don't get caught up on what style it is, because it makes no sense.
Yes, sir.
Demystify the martial arts. Be a human being in its application. You know, that's the best way to go about it.
Yes, sir. This is tremendous gems of wisdom, you guys. Thank you so very much, Uncle Bobby, for your application and your interviews and your wisdom. And you guys will have part 3 coming up as soon as Uncle Bobby is ready to do so. And again, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.